We've been talking about the Beatitudes for the past few weeks. What made Jesus stand out among the crowds of people? What drew people to him? Why did his message threaten those in power? How did those 12 followers of Jesus drum up the fantastic amount of zeal that they would have needed to continue Christ's mission? Preaching that good news in the face of certain ridicule at a minimum, and the inevitable torture and death that awaited them as they followed Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. We can only imagine the persona of Jesus as he walked among the people, talking matter-of-factly, very personably, intense and piercing into the soul, yet calm and inviting, a true enigma. Where was he from? Where did he get the authority with which he spoke? He was fearless, undaunted in the face of ridicule and challenge, bold in the message of his kingship, even while it was a subtle message. He walked into the desert knowing the trials that would come across the 40 days. He knew his inevitable end and walked toward it with confidence. Even today, 2,000 years of study later, writings by the church fathers and so many others, I think we have more questions than answers. If we had been there, how would we have reacted? What role would we have played? Would we have dropped our work and followed him? Or would we have continued in the rut of our lives? If we had heard the Beatitudes firsthand, would they have changed our lives? Or would we have scratched our heads and continued with business as usual? Why do we live such quiet lives of faith? What keeps us from hearing the message and receiving that burning sense of zeal that overtook the apostles? I dare say the message seems to have been lost throughout the years of tradition and practice, without the accompanying zeal of preaching. Now, I'm not saying that our priests aren't doing their job, but rather we've fallen into a routine of practicing our faith, lulled by a false sense of calm that we're not threatened, that our lives are not in danger. But we are in danger. We've been drawn into all of the same fears that were present 2,000 years ago. We've been drawn into an abdication of responsibility for our own lives among all of the rules and regulations that permeate our society. So let's go back and take a look at just one part of the message of Jesus, just the Beatitudes. Beatitudes 1 and 3, poverty of spirit and meekness. We can walk in peace and in humility, confident that we will not be stepped on by our broken or fallen society. We're not dependent on accolades and kudos for the accomplishments esteemed by our culture. We can rest in the knowledge that our accomplishments, whether they're small or great, bring about good and build up our little corner of the world. We don't have to fight to be top dog. We can build one another up and create even greater successes together. The second Beatitude, mourning. We can face the reality of the brokenness of this world and not fall into some deep depression, because we know who reigns victorious in the end. We know that every hardship of this world is temporary. thirsting for righteousness and justice, number 4. We can stand confidently and fight for what is just and right, and to persevere even when nothing seems to change, because we know that nothing is impossible. Mercy. We can forgive unjust behaviors, even against our own persons, and we can help others find forgiveness and peace and truth in their journeys, because we have received that help along our own journeys. Purity, clean of mind, number 6. We can strive to be clean of heart, mind, body, and soul without worrying what others might think, because the joy and the innocence of a child will overtake us and fill us to overflowing. Peacemaking. We can approach conflict with peaceful hearts, confident that the discipline that it takes and the strength that it takes to pursue working towards peace will not escape us. We will find that we're rich. And the last one, fear of persecution, or the persecuted will receive their reward. We can embrace all that is good and bring the good news, this freedom from oppression, the freedom from fear, to others without any concern over ridicule or persecution, because we know that the reward will be so much greater than anything that we could have engineered for ourselves. The Beatitudes, those 8 attitudes that Jesus suggested and encouraged, that drew people to Jesus in his speaking. When we can allow these Beatitudes to take root, real root in our soul, and grow in our minds and flower in our actions, then certainly we'll be taken over by that zeal that the apostles exhibited, that zeal that we probably can't even imagine for ourselves today. And then we'll be truly free to take authority over our lives, to proclaim the good news, to live and to love, because the authority with which we live and with which we speak comes from Christ our Lord, who won the victory for us.